So hi everybody, and thank you so much again for joining us today for the wonderful Ellie Pettigrew's AT training webinar. I'm Nikki Jones, I'm one of the clinical managers at AT Therapy, and I'll be chairing today's webinar. Any questions you do have during the webinar, please just type them into the chat box. This will be monitored throughout, and we will have a structured discussion time towards the end where Ellie will go through any of your questions and any other feedback you have about today's training session. The recording of today's video will be uploaded to AT Therapy's website and also our YouTube channel. As I said previously, if you do need to miss any of today's session, you will have access to this within the next few days. And any questions after this time, please just send to info@attherapy.co.uk. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Ellie, and we're all really excited for today's topic. So thanks, Ellie, again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I'll make a start. Thank you everyone so much for coming. Really appreciate it. So as Nikki said, we're going to have a look at supporting early communication skills and being a good communication partner, some strategies to help us with that. So the learning intentions, so what I'm hoping you're going to get from today's webinar is to develop a basic knowledge and understanding of communication development, and to develop some ideas and knowledge of assessing communication in early communicators. And then I'm going to go through some of my top tips, which I have included some on my Instagram page. So I thought it'd be nice to share some of those with you too. They're kind of the top tips that I tend to use a lot with my clients and tend to recommend on. So I thought it'd be a nice place to start with the communication pyramid. So this is just quite a nice visual to look at the foundations for communication, really. So we can see at the bottom non-verbal communication and early communication skills. So we're thinking about things like anticipation, turn taking, early attention skills, eye contact. And these are really the foundation for building communication, those building blocks for communication. We've then got looking and listening, so developing those attention skills a little bit further, extending attention. We've then got play, which is a big part of my role, I think. So I quite often come home and my boyfriend will say, oh, what have you been playing today? Because a lot of my sessions do evolve around play, because that's the kind of level that my clients are at and it's what they enjoy doing. And it's one of the top tips we'll come on to a little bit later. We've then got understanding, so beginning to follow instructions, and then we've got talking, so expressive communication skills. So whether that be with a communication device, whether it's speech, using their voice. And then we've got pragmatic, so using language socially for conversation with other people. And then finally, speech sounds. So I just wanted to show this really because we're going to be focusing on the foundation at the very bottom really of this pyramid, but it's just nice to see where the development of it really. Okay. So cute, included a picture of a very cute baby, just so that we can have a think. Obviously, we're everyone's muted and got their cameras off, so just have a think to yourselves. What do we do when a baby cries? So as a caregiver, a communication partner, we'll try and work out why the baby is crying. So we might think it's because they're hungry, so we might give them something to eat. We might think they're too hot, they're too cold, they need their nappy changing. We will do things to try and work out why the baby's crying. And by doing this, we are teaching the baby at that very early level about cause and effect, that by doing something, crying, their behaviour has an impact on those around them. We're going to try and work it out and add meaning onto the crying. as we try and work that out. So essentially at this level, we are teaching the baby communication intent, that by doing something, they can get a reaction from those around them and the environment. So communication development tends to happen in distinct stages, and these steps can be observed in children, including those with complex needs. So all children tend to go through very similar steps. It's just that the rates that they pass through these stages or they progress just differs depending on the individual. So I just wanted to have a look at the development of communication intent. So this is something that I use a lot with my clients. A lot of the clients I work with are at the pre-intentional stage of communication intent, communication, and we're looking at developing their communication skills to intentional communication. So, just going to swap between slides here. The first step is pre-intentional communications. This is when they respond to the event. And there's different stages within the pre-intentional communication. So we've got reflexive pre-intentional communication. So this is when an individual has a limited repertoire of behaviours and reflexes that can be interpreted by familiar people. So they are often reflexes, so things like crying, facial expressions, and the startle reflex. So at this stage, the caregiver, the communication partner, is attaching meaning to these reflexes, similar to the example with when a baby cries. We've then got the reactive pre-intentional stage, which is when they begin to react to what is happening around them. So we begin to see a wider variety of voluntary reflexes and behaviour. We've then got the proactive pre-intentional stage, which is when they begin to act more purposefully to people and objects around them within their environment. So, for example, they may look for a person or for an object and reach towards them. We've got here that the caregiver, the communication partner, may then interpret this as requesting, pass them the item, and model "you want Teddy." So beginning to model verbal communication on top of any non-verbal communication that they might be showing us. I'm going to jump back. So we've then got anticipatory communication. So this is when they begin to anticipate what will happen. So they might move their body excitedly, they might smile, they might look towards the person or the object to show anticipation that they know that something's going to happen, they know what's going to happen next. So this is different to the pre-intentional stage because they are anticipating before it happens, whereas at the pre-intentional stage, they're just responding to when it's happened. We've then got the intentional stage of communication development. This is when they can clearly communicate what it is that they want or they need. So they'll think what they want. They might think, I want the bubbles. They'll then potentially point to the bubbles. I point to the bubbles, and also potentially vocalize. We've then got words and ideas. So this is when they may start to say some single words. They may start to say some approximations of words. So they're starting to use words to express what they want or what they don't want. So they'll think what they want, they'll see what they want, they might point to it as well, and they might say bubbles or bubba, for example. Once they're beginning to use some words, we will then potentially see them joining words together and ideas. So still talking about what they can see, but it might be that they're saying more bubbles, bubbles go, bubbles stop. So starting to put those words together a little bit. And then finally, we've got abstract words and reasoning. So this is when they start to use language to plan, negotiate. We've all seen the toddler who will try and negotiate what they want with their parents and get away with all sorts. And we've then got predicting and reasoning. At this stage, they'll begin to talk about things beyond their immediate environment, so things that they can't see as well. And whereas before this stage, it's all things that they can see that's in front of them. Okay. So I just wanted to share this observation sheet. It's one that I use quite a lot with my clients. Quite often when I see a client for the first time, my clients tend to be at the pre-intentional stage, so they're relying on those around them, their communication partners, to interpret their communication, interpret their behaviour and reflexes. So quite often when I meet a client, I am relying on their parents, their caregivers, to teach me how the young person, the individual, communicates. So I'll quite often ask, well, what do they do when they're happy? Do they smile? Do they look towards the item? When they want more, what do they do when they're sad? Do they frown? Do they cry? Just to get a real picture about what those behaviours and reflexes can look like. This is the effective communication assessment observation sheet. So it's just something that I have in my toolkit to help extend that a little bit further. So I will present the client with different stimuli. So for example, a rainmaker, a shaker, bubbles, rustling bags and materials. I'll then observe what the client does when I present them with the stimuli. So just one stimuli at a time, so say it's the rainmaker. When I present this to them, do they vocalize? Do they laugh? Are there any other kinds of vocalizations? Does their body move? Do their legs move? Do they extend? Is there any movement in their arms, hands? Do they look towards the item? Do their eyes widen? I had one client who, when they heard or saw something that they liked, their eyes would really widen and she'd open her mouth. She wouldn't vocalize, she'd open her mouth. So we'd then interpret that as she likes it, she wants more. So I'd go back and complete this over several sessions with the same objects, maybe introduce some different objects. And then at the very end, you can see that it's we write an interpretation of the child's behaviour. So this is really useful because a lot of the people that I work with could have large families, they may have carers at home, they've got lots of different TAs in school. And in order to teach communication intent, we need to make sure that we're all responding consistently to their behaviours and reflexes. So once we've got an idea of what those are and what they can mean, we can then create a communication passport, so a document with all this information in that we can write down, right, when Johnny does X, Y, and Z, then we are going to respond by doing this, and just make sure that everyone is consistent across the board to help support that communication and extend it from being pre-intentional and develop it to intentional communication if appropriate for that individual. I then just wanted to look at the means, reasons and opportunity model, which if anyone's attended any speech and language therapy training before, it's a model that we all love, and we tend to go through it quite a lot, but it's just so important, and that's why. So when we're thinking about functional communication, I'll sometimes get called out and told something's not working, they're not using the device, they're not doing, there's no functional communication, there's a breakdown of some sort happening. I quite often use this model to look at and work out why. So in order to have functional communication, we need these three areas to be working, otherwise there is going to be a breakdown of communication. So we need a means of communication. So that's how do we communicate? Is it through speech? Is it non-verbally? Through body language, facial expressions, gesture? Is it a signing system? Is it paper-based, alternative and augmentative communication, or is it electronic AAC? So I have a client, Asia, who when I first started working with her, she didn't have any functional means of communication in place really. She had a pod book that had been introduced in school, but she also had CVI and visual impairment, and the pod book was quite a large book, quite thick book, lots of visual information on there, too much visual information on there. She couldn't use it functionally. So she was experiencing some behaviours at home in terms of communication breakdown. So there'd be a communication breakdown and then she might rock backwards on the couch or in her chair. So we came in and we had a look and we thought, well, she's got no functional means of communication. She's really good at pointing and gesturing and vocalizing, but actually that's then difficult for the communication partner to interpret that consistently as to the meaning. So we need to have a look at putting some functional means of communication in place for her. So we started with single symbols. We started with some motivating items like her dolly that she could request, and then some core words as well, like more, stop and go. We're now at the point now where she's using Grid for iPad on an iPad, and she's got access to four images on the screen. So she's now got a functional means of communication using the device, and she still does use gesture and to communicate. So for example, she'll point to the door when she's had enough in a session and wants to go. We've then got reasons for communication. So why do we communicate? Quite often when I go into schools, everybody always wants things that we can request, so like snack time, for example. They want banana, crisps, drink, and that's all great, and it is expanding their communication, but actually it's not expanding the reasons for communication. It's only allowing them to request. When actually, if you think about all the reasons we communicate in a day, it's not just for requesting. For example, now I'm communicating to share information, and we might also communicate to gain attention, request, comment, question, say no, which is a really big one. I had a client who we introduced an oi switch so that she could gain others' attention, and she absolutely loved it. Spoke to parents about what they feel in their family, what language would be appropriate for gaining attention, and they went for oi. And she absolutely loved it, and she did so well. Very quickly picked it up. We were doing a lot of switch work anyway with her, and she could then gain people's attention when they weren't sat just right next to her. Finally, we've got opportunities. So we're thinking about when, where, and with whom do we communicate. So at home or in school, different times of the day, for example, playtime, with different people, and shared languages and interests. Also thinking about processing time within this one. So a lot of the clients that I work with respond really well to pauses. So I like to call them the awkward pauses, because sometimes you do feel like you're waiting a long time, but they need that processing time. It may be that you provide an instruction or model something, and it could take them such a long time. I've got a client at the minute whose processing time is about 20 seconds. So we'll give an instruction, wait 20 seconds, and then we'll repeat the instruction, but we'll try and repeat it in the exact same way that we had done the first time, because if we say it slightly differently, they're then having to process that we've said something slightly different and start that whole processing again. And so it just makes it harder for them. So I wanted to go through my top 10 tips for supporting communication and attention. When I created this, it was with schools in mind. So it does use the language child throughout, but actually it's appropriate for supporting anyone's communication, any early communication skills. So the first one is follow their lead. So watch what they're doing, engage with and copy. So I remember when I was a speech and language therapy student, you'd write a session plan and you really wanted to get the session exactly how you planned it. And it doesn't always go that way. I very much follow my client's lead, because if they're not interested, they're not going to learn. They're going to be more using their energy and focus on telling me that they want to do something different, wanting to get out of the session. They're not going to enjoy it. So I like to disguise therapy and working towards targets as play. But don't be tempted to lead the play and make it fun. So we've got a picture of Asia here, who I mentioned earlier. And I'd taken lots of different toys with me to the session. And I've got our AT therapy bear, Benny, with me, who was sat on the chair, just watching the session. And Asia decided that she wanted to play with Benny. And we just had a look to see what we had in the room that we were in, and we found this ice cream. You can see on her device, she's got food, drink, and I think the last one's dress. So these are the action words that we'd introduced when she plays with her dolly. She loves playing with her dolly at home. So she'd actually selected feed on her device. So then I was looking for something that we could introduce into that play scenario with her. And she actually engaged in that for probably about 30 minutes, playing with Benny and feeding him and drinking him, making him do different things. And it was so lovely. And she had a great time. I had a great time. And it was just really good for embedding those action words into the session with her. We've then got at their level, face to face. So quite often in sessions, I prefer to sit or kneel on the floor. I'll try and find a cushion for my knees if possible. Just because I like being at the client's level, so that they can see my face. They can see what I'm modeling, what I'm looking at, providing them with the opportunity to see my face clearly, to see the words that I'm using. Sometimes I'll hold an object next to my face. So if it is Teddy, so I'll say Teddy and hold the Teddy next to my face so that they can see the Teddy close to my face, saying the word, and directing their attention to my face. In terms of eye contact, I'm not a big fan of working on eye contact as a target. Quite often it can cause a lot of anxiety for clients. Just because they're not looking doesn't mean they're not paying attention. They're still taking it all in. Some of mine, they don't like making eye contact, and I'm not going to force them to. I'm just trying to get on their level so that they can see my face, so that when I'm modeling language to them, it can support with that. Okay, and then we've got copying their movement and sound. So I've got a video to share here. It's all on intensive interaction, developing early communication skills. We've got a list of some of the skills that it can support to develop. So I'm just going to play this video, and I hope that you can hear it.
Ricky is 11 and is severely autistic. He attends a special school in Bristol. Like many of the pupils, he has no usable speech and a limited understanding of the world around him. His teachers describe him as personable, but he can become withdrawn for long periods, lost in his own world, and communication with him can be difficult. They wonder if there's any way this can be overcome. Phoebe Caldwell has worked for over 30 years as a practitioner with people with severe learning difficulties and behavioural distress. She uses a method of communication known as intensive interaction to emotionally engage with them. She's come to work with Ricky to see if this method can help overcome the communication difficulties and isolation that his autism presents.
Intensive interaction really is finding a way of using people's body language in order to get into conversation with them. We're looking at all the things they do, all the behaviours, all the sounds they make, all the utterances, all the movements, and particularly the rhythms. And we tune into these in order to get what we call emotional engagement. What we're trying to do is we're trying to set up signals which the brain recognises and to shift their attention from what they are doing by themselves, from solitary self-stimulation to shared activities, something we can do together, so that what has been something they're doing on their own becomes interactive. And this is the great bridge that one has to try and build.
As well as working with Ricky, Phoebe is keen to show class teacher Claire Gates how to practice this method so she can use it on a regular basis.
You know, he really likes to engage with people, and the way that he's doing it at the moment is taking people to what he wants and touching very gently and letting everyone know what he wants by guiding them.
But of course that is actually him learning to manipulate the world rather than to relate to it.
It's Phoebe's first session with Ricky.
Right, you should have two if you...
She asks Claire to join in, getting her to consider the sounds that Ricky makes.
It starts at the lowest level by just listening to their breathing rhythm. Because the person will listen to their own breathing, they'll actually hear it. So it shifts the attention from the inner self-stimulation to shared.
Yeah.
And so you actually see very often, the surprise. Where did that come from? We're always trying to shift their attention from solitary self-stimulation to a shared activity. Yeah, did you see that? His head came up immediately. He was expecting you to do it with him, and you're trying to tune into any sort of emotional level. So, if they're sort of shouting, you might go, So you're actually tuning into how they feel.
Ricky eventually turns round, beginning to show more of an interest in Phoebe and Claire. As well as being withdrawn, people with autism often display obsessional behaviours. For Ricky, this means sprinkling, running things like corn or gravel through his fingers. Phoebe wants to see how much Ricky will interact when he's sprinkling. It's his most obsessional behaviour, and he can do it for hours at a time if left undisturbed.
We need to pick up on all the positive bits. And it really may be flapping their hands or flapping a bit of string or banging a bead or playing with rice or whatever and watching it dribble away. Although these are fixations, we are going to use them for communication. I think that he likes this so much because one of the things he does a lot is play with his fingers, with his hands, and he's actually giving himself a better version of that stimulus when he's playing with this. And so it gives him a sensation he's really happy with.
So is there a danger of intensive interaction perpetuating these fixations?
I don't think anybody who's used this has ever found that it actually reinforces their repetitive behaviour, because what it does is it shifts their attention from that inner world to the world outside. That's mine, but it happened somewhere else.
After a few minutes, Phoebe develops the interaction by sharing only one tray, Ricky seems to take this well, and his usually solitary sprinkling becomes a joint activity.
As soon as you use their language, you'll get the eye contact, you get an increase in proximity, you get interest in what people are doing, you get emotional closeness. You can add some more. Thank you. That's great. Now, put your foot there. Oh!
I'm just going to stop it there. I just wanted you to see kind of, I guess, the progress and development in that session with Phoebe around intensive interaction. So at first he was very withdrawn on his own in the corner, and then he did start looking to them, anticipating that they were going to vocalise as well. And by the end of it, they're joining in an activity together. They've got that joint attention. As Phoebe said, she's entered his world. She's speaking his language, and it's just so lovely to see. And she's following his lead, which is key. Oh.
Hooray!
There we go. Next, we've got pause burst activities. So anything that you can leave a pause in. These are great for developing anticipation and cause and effect skills, as well as communication intent. So looking towards you or the object for more. We've got games like peekaboo or singing songs and leaving pauses. So we've got row, row, row the boat. I won't sing it to you all now. Gently down the stream. And if you see a crocodile, don't forget to leave a nice long pause. Observe to see, do they look towards you for the scream? Do they smile? Is there any changes in their body, their non-verbal communication that you could interpret as go or anticipation that they're ready? And then do the scream together and turn it into a game. I quite often use voice output switches for these types of activities for clients that I've done a bit of switch work with already. And I know that they understand that cause effect and effect of using a switch. I'll then record scream on the switch so that when it gets to that, they can have a turn, and developing that turn taking in those songs, that they have to wait and then have their turn in the song. Ready, steady, go activities. Bubbles are great for this. And then we've got 1, 2, 3 as well. I've just got a video of, this is Ibby, one of my clients, of us doing some pause burst activity.
Ibby, you chose the water spray. You ready? Steady. Go! Oh!
He spotted himself in the camera at the end then, so he's just admiring himself. He looked away, disengaged for a little bit, but then he came back to the activity and he looked at the water spray, so I interpreted that as go. And then we did it again and again, and he loved the water spray in that session. We turned it into a bit of intensive interaction as well. He breathed, I don't know if you heard that, but he breathed out of his nose, so I copied. And then with the hands, we developed that later so that we were both feeling the water a little bit later in that session. And he responded really well to that.
Ibby.
There we go. Number 5 is communication temptation. So this is all about how we can adapt and manipulate and control the environment to create those opportunities for spontaneous communication. So thinking back to earlier on when I spoke about the means, reasons and opportunities model, So this is focusing on how can we create those opportunities. So why do we use them? To provide opportunities and reasons really to communicate, to support somebody to initiate communication, to model new words and vocabulary, and to model putting those words together. So again, thinking back to developing communication intent a little bit earlier on in the presentation, there's lots of different things that you can model in these scenarios at various different stages of that staircase. So some ideas include using a toy that is difficult to use or has a lid that's difficult to open. So I've got giant bubble ones that I think they sell at summer in the garden. So I fasten that lid tight so that it encourages them to communicate help, whether that's passing the item back to me, or I can model to them, oh, you want some help, using whatever communication system it is that they're using. Placing motivating items in a clear box or container might be slightly out of reach, so a little bit of sabotage. Again, it might encourage them to point toward the box, and you can then model using their communication system, whatever it is that they use. Being forgetful. So I've got some clients who just find this hilarious as well, that I've forgotten something. It makes you very human to them. So giving them their snack unopened, so a packet of crisps and forgetting to open it, or a yogurt but no spoon. Although I do have some clients who that would not faze, they'd drink the yogurt instead. So just thinking about who it is that you're working with and what could work there. Make a mistake, give them a fork instead of a spoon, or a ruler instead of a pencil. Again, it depends on who you're working with for that one. And then I've already alluded to this one in number 2, so placing items in sight but out of reach, either on a shelf or behind something in a box. So I delivered similar training to one of my school settings just before summer, so quite a while ago now. And I came into one of the classes following the training, and they'd actually put a shelf up above their interactive whiteboard and placed some motivating items on there. So they had a bubble machine and some other motivating items, and then they had photographs around the classroom of those items, so that they had choice boards. So they'd redirect the pupils to those boards to then request something that was on the shelf, and that was just really lovely to see. I was really proud of them. It was a nice moment. Then got modelling communication. The fancy name is aided language stimulation. So I've just got another video here now to watch. I'm going to press play. I think that's just a really lovely video that shows how important modelling is and using the system that the individual is using. And I think thinking back to the means, reasons, opportunity model, in that video we see that her opportunities for communication increase. They're using it in a lot more environments, going shopping, for example. The opportunities to use it with different people. So she's using it with her mum, dad, brother, and the reasons she's communicating increases. So again, going shopping. And then the one that makes me laugh is arguing with a brother, which most siblings do. I think it's really important as well that everybody is using it with them, using the device with them. So I'll come out and see a client once a week for an hour, but actually if that device isn't then being used the rest of the time, it's the other people, it's not me, it's the people that are closest to the individual, the TAs, communication partners, carers, parents, family, are the ones that make the biggest impact when they then go and use it the rest of the week with them. So it's a really, really important top tip. Number 7 is turning questions into comments. This is one of those that's really easy to do, but also really hard to remember to do. So quite often we will ask children or individuals kind of like, what's this? What are you doing? Where's Teddy? Where does this go? Because we're wanting to test their knowledge, test their communication, test what they can do. But we actually need to teach language first before we can do that. So instead of what's this, we could say you have the ball and label what they have. What are you doing? You're washing your hands, wash, wash, wash. Where's the teddy? Teddy is in bed. Where does this go? Blocks go in the box. And we're actually modelling a lot of vocabulary there to them then. We're not just modelling nouns, we're modelling verbs, prepositions. So it's really important to try and teach that language before we go ahead and ask questions. Also, I guess it's just important to think about how we'd feel if we were just constantly asked questions, constantly feeling like we're being tested. It's not, nobody wants that or likes that. So just trying to turn those questions into comments. I still catch myself asking questions. I try and record a lot of my sessions as and when so that I can watch them back. And sometimes when I watch them back, I am really cringing, thinking, oh, yeah, I've asked too many questions, should have modelled a bit more there. But we're only human. Number 8 is using gesture. Gestures, we all gesture with our hands. It's a natural part of communication. It helps to add meaning to what we're saying. And support understanding. We need to use consistent gestures and signs to support keywords as we talk. So there's some examples here of, so you might ask, do you want more? And just model the more sign. Do you want help? Should we go? Let's stop. Time to finish. And just model the key signs there. That might have been a mix of signing systems. All my schools use different signing systems, so I always have to, when I go in, get the right one in my head. I do have a client who's started to copy some signs now as well, which is interesting. So when we're playing with toys, they'll, when I sign the teddy's going to sleep, they've started signing sleep now and copying some of those gestures. I think it is important to add, when thinking about gestures and linking it to understanding. Again, sometimes I'll come and do an assessment and people will say, oh yeah, they understand everything that's said to them. They'll go and get the coat on at break time. But actually, when you break that down, the teacher, the TA, whoever it is pointing over to the coats. Everyone else is going over to the coats. The gesture can have a huge impact on understanding and supporting understanding as well. reducing verbal language, so allow those awkward silences for processing, use keywords when providing instructions. The general rule is to model one keyword above what they're using. So we've got some examples here. So we've got single keyword level, give the spoon to Teddy. So here, all they've got to understand really is it the spoon or the cup, because the only who option is Teddy. Whereas if we introduce rabbit as well, they've then got to understand whether I'm saying Teddy or rabbit, so that's one, and whether I'm saying spoon or cup, that's two. So two keywords they've got to understand there. We've then got give the spoon to Teddy wearing the jumper. Again, it's two keyword level because we've got spoon or cup. They're both Teddies, so we've got to understand whether the sentence has got the word jumper in it or not. So I've just got another video here.
Ready, steady, go! It's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring. Stop! Again?
So there, he reached out towards me. So then I modelled again, just sticking to the single word then, because it's not one that he uses himself, so just modelling that single word to him. And then finally, offering choices. We all love choices. So offering things to choose from. So at snack time, would you like orange juice or blackcurrant? You could offer them the real objects or photographs or symbols, depending where their understanding is, yogurt or toast. And accept any means of communication. So whether that's reaching out towards it, eye pointing, smiling, signing, using their communication device or system. And this then allows you to model the language. So you chose bubbles if they reach out to it. Got another video of Ibby here.
Would you like rainmaker or water spray? Which one would you like? Let me check. Oh, which one? Yeah, the water spray.
So that's a really nice example of where I could have waited longer. So you see him look towards the water spray. I then think, yeah, he's chosen water spray, but I'm just going to double check. And he's about to reach out to confirm his choice as I'm double checking. So it's just one of those where I watch it back and I can be more mindful that next time I'll wait a little bit longer for him. But I like to show them my clients what the choices are first. So I don't just show him the rainmaker. I want him to know what it does. I don't just show him the bottle of water spray again. I want him to know what it does so that he's making a bit more of an informed decision about what he wants to play with. So just to summarise, I guess remember the top 10 tips. This visual with the top 10 tips is on my Instagram page, if I remember right. Accept any means of communication, I think, is really important. Don't just, I guess, see verbal communication as the best form of communication, the best means of communication. If, like Ibby was looking towards the water spray, I'm going to accept that as him communicating that he wants the water spray. He did then reach out towards it as well to confirm that, which is great. Following the individual's lead and readiness to learn. So if they're not ready to have a look at what you've brought with them, just follow their lead and what they are ready to engage with at that point. And consider their means, reasons and opportunities for communication, as quite often if there is a breakdown in communication, it's because one of these things needs reviewing, needs looking into. And then I've just got some references and useful information. So these are some of the resources that I use on a regular basis. So some of the Outclan resources, the SLT scrapbook, early intervention handbook is so useful for ideas. And she also has an Instagram page, which is really useful. Yeah. And that's it from me.
Ellie, thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. And I think everybody today will be filled with lots of new ideas on how they can support their early communicators. We do just have a question from Tara, just about your Instagram page, which I know is coming up shortly anyway, but do you want to share your page with everybody?
Yeah, so my Instagram page is AT Therapy Ellie. So I try and consistently put things on there. Some weeks I'm better than others, I do try. So I just put any useful resources that I come across. I like to share them. And then I have a look on other people's Instagram pages because it's useful for me as well to get some ideas.
That's great. So now basically we've got some time for discussion. So if you do have any questions, please pop them into the chat. I'm also going to launch a poll, which should just pop up on your screens now, just with a couple of questions about how you found today's webinar. So if you could just answer those for us, we'd really, really appreciate it. If anyone does have any comments for Ellie, again, feel free to pop them in the discussion and we'll share those with Ellie and with yourselves now. One thing I really loved, Ellie, was the fact that you had those lovely video examples of all the strategies that you're putting in place. I think it really showed just how useful your strategies are. Do you have a favourite activity to complete?
I think probably the nursery rhymes with the switches. I do love a voice output switch. I think a lot of my clients just love, it doesn't have to be nursery rhymes, just any song. And just they just really enjoy having a turn in that interaction. It's just so lovely to see.
That's great.
I do recommend, if anyone ever can record themselves working with somebody or in a session, it's so useful to watch back. Just, yeah, like I was saying, the video of me with Ibby, like I should have waited a little bit longer in that scenario, but sometimes when you're in it, you don't realise, and then you come back and it is really good for reflecting on practice.
That's brilliant. Okay, well, if anybody thinks of any further questions, please feel free to add them into the chat. If we can just have a quick look now at all of our Instagram pages, Ellie, that would be really handy.
There we go.
So, thank you. So we do have a range of Instagram accounts within the team. Feel free to have a look through them. And we also have our AT Therapy YouTube channel, which this webinar will be uploaded to, as well as a Facebook account, which is full of lots of nice things that have been going on in the team, as well as useful pointers for activities and events that are going on nearby. On our next slide, we also have some of our upcoming training events. So we do offer play included training here at AT Therapy, which focuses on the approach that was known as Lego-based therapy. So we do have some courses coming up late in the spring, summer. So please feel free, get in touch with us if you would like any further information around that. We have also just hosted our Makaton Level 1 course, and we'll be looking to host some further workshops. So if you are interested, get in touch again using the info@attherapy.co.uk. We also have our next lunchtime webinar coming up. It's a really exciting one, and it's going to be presented by a group of our speech and language therapists. We've got Shannon Ronan, we've got Jen Clark, Caitlin McWilliams and Millie Wyatt. And they're going to be talking about working independently to support client and therapist development, the experiences of developing a specialism within independent practice. And that'll be taking place on Friday, so it is a different day for us next time. Friday the 21st of April from 12 till 1. So that event will be going live on Eventbrite shortly. Feel free to book on, and we really look forward to seeing you all then. And thanks again for all joining in today. Helen says she thinks it's always the hardest around waiting time for the child to process what is required and then respond. So really good advice today, Ellie.
Yeah, that's why I call it the awkward pause, because sometimes you do feel like you're waiting. I've had clients in the past who we've had to wait like a full minute for them to process the information. And it can be really difficult.
Yeah. I know, well, you gave us some really great advice and strategies, so thank you for that. So we'll be stopping the recording now.